Do you want to just do the gavel then? Just go ahead.
Oh, what are we doing with the gavel?
We just call the meeting to order.
Perfect.
Okay, welcome to the August 13th Orville Parks Commission meeting. Are we going to take roll?
Yes. Commissioner Holt? Here. Commissioner Krantz?
Here?
I note Commissioner Jones is absent and Commissioner Rich? Here. Thank you.
Okay, would either of you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Great.
All right. Join me in the pledge. Salute. Pledge.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any public speakers to address the commission? No, I don't think so. Okay. So looks like our first order of regular business is an Adopt a Park program update.
Thank you. So in this program, the commission would take on selecting a park, or each commissioners, if I as understand it, would take on selecting a park to do improvements to that, or do a cleanup once a month and then some other times during the year. After having looked at this, it looks like this program needs some revision, needs to be refined a little bit, because there are things in here that aren't really spelled out about how the volunteers will be selected, how they'll be vetted, and then who the staff person is that would be with the crew, the volunteers, as they're doing the work. So I think that there needs to be more discussion amongst staff about how we might do this, operate this program. So I think I'd like to ask is there interest still in the Parks Commission to pursuing this program?
Thank you. I would like to know what staff thinks about it, because just catching up, I know sometimes when commissioners or board members or council members bring things to staff, it's not always efficient. So I would like to see a program that is, if this is designed by staff, or at least updated by staff, and then I would support that and do whatever I could to support it.
So I like your use of the word efficient, because that is sort of where I was fumbling around actually to describe the to be able to. I think monthly would be kind of a lot, and there I don't think that you would have interest with a group of volunteers that would continue to come out every month, but maybe something on an annual basis or biannual basis, something like that might be better, and it would be better to have city staff involved. So I think if we were going to do something like this, we should have a discussion, like Wade should be part of this. And then, right, Wade revisit this and then discuss it, but things that volunteers could do safely and in the parks that would have an impact, that would let them feel good about what they're doing, but is something that doesn't require high-level skills or machinery or any sort of complicated tools. And there's quite a bit that can be done in those parameters. So if we can come back to another council commission or another Parks Commission, and then with a proposal for another program. And then
I'm wondering if maybe for scheduling's sake, we could also marry it with our two kind of main community semi-annual events. Maybe have something around Feather Fiesta time, maybe around Salmon Festival time, or, also I agree. I think monthly is too often. I think maybe even quarterly is too often. But maybe something that also correlates with what we're celebrating in the community.
So when you say around, are you talking about on the day of, or something like ahead of that, so that
Well, I
there,
guess it
things
would
are cleaned up
depend on
beforehand?
who was volunteering, but maybe around that time frame. And I'd also like to revisit with city staff how we can invite younger people who belong to organizations that typically have really good supervision and have an interest in community service, such as Scouts or, one of the junior highs or high schools, if they have a need for satisfying some sort of an elective requirement or something for graduation.
Yeah, I did a program like this before in another city, and the first time we did it, we had nearly 400 people that came out, but it was a lot of effort getting the people to come and getting the groups, and we found that church groups were really quite keen on providing volunteers and coming out as a group, and it can be a really great way to create community spirit, and so I think that there's capitalizing on this as just a cleanup day. Or if we capitalize on the cleanup day into something greater, then I think there's something out there we can do.
And do you guys have in Paradise, we have a Love Paradise Day? I say we. I live down here, but I work up there. And so I don't know if you guys have Love Oroville Days or anything like that, but they have a whole group for Love Paradise, and I think it's twice a year. And things like my organization, we have a demonstration garden. And that's one of the things that they'll get a group of people to come out twice a year and do our garden on those Love Paradise Days. And there's generally youth, a lot of times from like the Adventist school or home schools are a big one. Maybe you could start a Love Oroville Day if there isn't one.
That's a great idea.
We'll come up with our own name, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Can I turn on my mic? Oh,
you're turning each other on and off.
it has a delay.
There you
Okay. So when reading it over, I first thought that it would be more the club that adopts it, kind of doing their own events. So maybe you could not limit it to just the couple of year events that you put together as the city, so that they could still have the option if they wanted to send people out weekly or monthly, and then that way they have some ownership of that park. Because if you're just doing it with the whole community kind of advertising it, which is great, then you're only gonna kind of have them when you have a big group. So if we could have some sort of, even if it's like just a small metal sign that says this park's adopted by this organization, so they feel ownership on, hey, if there's trash just on a random day we're there, we're gonna clean it. So I think that would be good, is to not limit it to just the few days a year. That way they kind of, like the Adopt a Highway, they kind of go out at their discretion as well.
The yeah, I see where you're heading with that. The caveat that we have to have on that is there would probably have to be a city staff person that's with them. So we have to arrange, figure out who that's going to be. It'll be someone from his crew, and then how that looks. So I think designing a program, and so I think if I can kind of capture what you're saying is, we can plan 2 big events, but if someone wants to do more,
Right.
why would we stop
Don't
them?
discourage them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So would that just be for liability? You'd want
Yeah.
a staff person, or?
Yeah, and it'll have to be, it would have to be organized so that, if someone's doing work on a public space that's for the benefit of the community, then sadly, it creates a liability for the city. If the city ends up having to do a payout, the entire community is paying out, So one, we don't want anyone to get hurt. And 2, we want to reduce any sort of liability to the community. So we would want to come up with something that fits, and then there'll be waivers every time that someone comes out. And I'm definitely not saying no to any of this, but I think that we have some work internally with staff to figure out something that really can work, and what staff member might be doing that with them. So it's a good idea.
Okay. Any other comments on the Adopt a Park program?
So it was first 2020, but there was never any no action
We had a lot of
taken.
ongoing discussion about it and exchanging of ideas. One of the things, though, that we were running into was having to do with liability, so, yeah. Okay, moving on to the next item, Parks Commission and its authority.
So this was brought up by one of the commissioners. So this wasn't a staff-initiated item, so I don't remember who brought that up.
It may have been me. I had some questions, but I don't think it was worded exactly like this.
Okay.
Something of the sort. I believe it did. come
So
from
do you want me to intro?
Yes, please.
So I've been on this commission, gosh, since 2022, and I've been in this room maybe 3 or 4 times, right? Because the meeting's always getting canceled. And then when it's not getting canceled, I remember not really having it in the forethought of my mind because it was always getting canceled, a really regular. So my question was, what do we want to do with this commission? Does it have value to the administration or to the council? And should we continue? I mean, I'm not familiar with the charter. I imagine maybe because of the charter we have to have it. But does it have value? And then what's the direction going forward? And I'm not aware, and maybe it's just me that's not aware. I'm not aware of how this commission communicates to the council, because I understand that a lot of times you can have a parks or arts commission, and it's really good for the council to have that because the parks commission can deal with some of the issues and then provide reports to council, but I don't know that that's how it's done here. So I just kind of wanted an overview of what the Parks Commission's role is and what we do going forward. Because I don't really like having all the canceled meetings.
Yeah.
I would love it if either it was dissolved, if it's not needed, or if there was maybe consistent meetings, quarterly, half a year, whatever's needed.
So I actually had this conversation with Commissioner Holt a couple of weeks ago. So the commission is largely an advisory commission. So if there's things happening with parks, or there's going to be an update or a new park or consideration of a new park or something of that such, then they would then it goes here first and then it goes to council. So what comes out of here is a recommendation to council. So the reason that we've had these cancellations recently is that we haven't had a topic. So we have had, or if we did have a topic, we didn't have a quorum. So we can't meet without a quorum, or nothing can happen if there's a quorum. So if we have council or commissioners that have identified that they're not going to be there, then we kind of know. I think there was one time where a commissioner had said they weren't going to come, and then that's when Kayla started to put out originally, will you be coming, so that we know, because if one other person comes, then we don't have a quorum. So so there are the current Parks Commission is an ordinance, actually, Kayla. It's an ordinance, right?
It's in our city charter.
Under the city charter,
Yes.
right? There's actually broader powers than what are being utilized. And the charter is being updated right now, so that's something that Brian Ring has been working on.
Okay.
And the Parks Commission sort of authority is going to be changed to match the actual Park Commission, so that it's more of advisory. As it is right now, the commission is supposed to have a budget and manage the budget and all these other things, but that hasn't been the practice, I think, for
Ever.
Right? Yeah, right. So. One of the things that I had committed to Commissioner Holt is that we would start to put out a notice to all the commissioners 2 weeks in advance before the meeting, so that there isn't a last-minute cancellation, so we can find out, one, is everybody going to come? Or, well, is everyone anticipating to be there? And is there anything to put on the agenda?
Great.
Yeah, so as staff, we don't have things to put on the agenda all the time, and we don't want to, I guess we don't really want to labor you all with just making things up either.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we used to have a little more to discuss when the museums were under our
Yep.
purview. So that also sort of eliminated certain topics and public presentations that were coming in.
I really, can I continue?
Sure, please.
I really like the 2-week notice, and I love the emails that are coming from Kayla. Is it also possible to get confirmation more, because I know that you only need to notice for agendas maybe, 3 days in advance. But is it possible that the commissioners could know when you know that there's not going to be a meeting, not just 3 days in advance?
Yes, so this time when Kayla put the notice out a couple of weeks ago, we knew that there was something going to be on there. And then we had these things that came in to be, to request. So actually, no, we didn't have anything, right, Kayla? Everything that's on the agenda tonight was actually sent to us from a commissioner.
Right, it was sent from the commissioner, rolled over from the April meeting.
Rolled
Okay.
over- Yeah, right. So, so we can always have discussions about things that are important, like, if the commissioners feel like there's something important that they would like to discuss and like something they would like to posit to the council as a recommendation, then we can have a meeting, we can put that on the agenda, and then we can take that recommendation to the council. So if you say, I really feel like we should do whatever it is, and then we could, as staff, we could start to puzzle that out about how that might occur, how that might happen. We can come back and talk to the commissioner about it again. And then if it seems like it's flushed out, then we can take it to council for an actual request.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I think the third item kind of goes with the second item, and what I'm going to say is, I think that I personally applied, because there's a lot of things I see could use improvement and things I would like to suggest and help with that kind of aren't being currently done with the parks. Complaints I hear from people in the community, especially moms, about safety and stuff like that. So I would like to encourage meeting every month, even if we're not sure about what's going to be talked about, because if you don't meet, I haven't really learned what is going on with the commission until we sit down and talk about it. So I do think there's a lot of room for improvement with our parks, and that's what I would like to encourage, to continue to meet, just so the conversation's continuing to be had, versus when you're not meeting at all, you're not talking about anything, so.
So if we were to meet,
It's quarterly.
yeah, if we met quarterly, so you're talking about still meeting quarterly?
I'm talking about just being sure, even if, like, say, people don't know what's going to be on there to talk about, that you could put an item that says, current goals, kind of like the third one, just to talk about
Got
every
it.
time.
Okay. So we could have that as a sort of a
Kind of
standing
a
item.
floating every meeting. 'Cause I don't ever think there's nothing the Parks Commission could talk about. There's always so many things
Yeah,
that we could be coming up with and working toward.
we can do that.
How could we also manage, for people, I still think there are a lot of people in the community who don't know they are welcome to come to these meetings, who don't know when the meetings take place. Not everybody is constantly checking city websites. How would city staff and commission feel about maybe navigating some online feedback that, we could certainly dissect and make sure that it's appropriate, but having community feedback that way that commissioners could bring to meetings, or something, I don't know, even necessarily something that has to be run by the city, maybe just setting up a Parks Commission Facebook page or something, and let people say, this is what I notice when I take my children to such and such park, or after big events, this seems to be a problem. Whatever the community's feedback is, or what the community wants from their parks.
So I feel like often those social media pages, they turn into some more to like, well, there's actually one called Rants and Raves, right?
Right.
And so I don't think you're getting the true filter of the community when you do that, because it tends to get distilled down to a few people that, that have their things that they want to say.
Okay.
In the spirit of what you're saying, though, I think that there's something we can do with that. So I think if I'm getting it, you would like to have more of a you'd like to have some sort of open dialogue on some sort of format or medium.
Because I also am not sure that members of the community necessarily feel comfortable filling out a slip and standing at the podium and addressing a commission.
Well, one thing that we could do is we could let people know that they can mail in a letter or something like that with a request or some sort of concern or something that they would like more information about. And then they could tune in to the show here
Right.
and they could hear the answers there.
Okay.
In my recent experience with doing the ATP grant for Table Mountain and Washington Avenue, doing community workshops just to get the community engaged. It was a heavy lift because we were at the Fly-In, we were at all these different events downtown. I personally knocked on over 600 doors, over 300 doors here, 300 doors here, and we still would.
Wait, guess how many
we would
people came?
budge the
Right.
needle with
Right.
just a couple people coming in.
Yep.
And community outreach it's an interesting thing because folks say they want to engage in it, they want to do this, they want to do that. The most community engagement we had for our ATP for active transportation for Table Mountain and Washington Avenue was actually at the Fly-In where we had folks out there doing basically survey monkeys, or monkey surveys, whatever. Asking what are your top 5 buttons and push buttons, and we put it on a hot map, and we were using those comments. Even with the 2,000 or 3,000 people that went to the Fly-In, we got good numbers. We were close to over 150 people, I think, is what actually responded to it. But again, it was very difficult, and it feels like you're pushing a stone uphill in the mud constantly just to get folks to engage. Maybe you guys could try like a special event like at the Salmon Festival or some of these other, where there's at the farmer's market type thing or something. We can have a pop-up tent and you say, we're the planning, the Parks Commission, and what do you guys think of our park? And maybe do some ad hoc surveying of what's your hot topics. I mean, it's usually graffiti, it's usually trash, it's usually homeless
Yep.
people.
Yep.
It's always security.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it's kind of been my experience since I've been here. It's hard to get folks to engage. And to speak to Pat, even on the city website where we're publishing the city council meetings and other stuff, there's some folks that go on there. It seems like there's a lot of regulars that go on there, but it's almost in a vacuum. And I'm not sure how to elevate that either.
I hear what you're saying, and I believe you. I think there's something that happens, though, when the public is invited. So I think even if they don't show up, if you are making a concerted effort to invite them, then they feel welcome. They may not reach out until there's an issue. But some ways that I could think of maybe are, maybe you could put a sign at the park that says, did you know that you have a park commission, that you could reach out to, or, just the occasional social, because I know that the city's engaging in community relations specialists or somebody to help with PR. So maybe the occasional, week before the meetings is get engaged with your parks. The meeting is at 5:15 on next Wednesday, and that could be all it is. And even if they don't show up, it kind of I think there's a mental thing that happens to know that you're represented and you're invited.
Yeah, I like the idea maybe of putting signs in the park about Park
Something to
Commission.
Consider, yeah. I just feel like that might be just another graffiti point, but.
Oh, well, you're probably right.
That's the negative side of me, because it's my folks that are out there putting the sign in.
Absolutely.
They're the ones that are taking their graffiti off.
Right, and signs aren't, it's
Or
not,
they're burned, or they're damaged, or sometimes stolen, or it just becomes another workload for us.
We can certainly
We can certainly look into it, though.
We
I'm
can
not-
certainly I can look at having as we're talking, I was already thinking about having the marketing people come up with some way to bring out messages about the park.
right.
What
We-
what about even just a suggestion box somewhere that they have access to, that they could, again, I'm going back to, I think not everybody's entirely comfortable speaking publicly, or, some people might feel a little more comfortable writing down their complaint or their suggestion and just having it somewhere where they know somebody's going to see it, but they don't necessarily have to stand up in front of a group and speak, or, that could be an alternative as well.
That one,
I think it was before, probably over here, there was a survey at City Hall about where do you want a water park? That was probably 7 years ago. But it was just a survey that was sitting on the front desk that had 2 pages, and it had a bunch of questions about what you wanted from the aquatic center. So if it was just some sort of one-page paper that y'all can encourage, hey, we have this form about our parks, what would you like to see happen, or just come up with some questions with some input. And if you put it out on Facebook, hey, you can come pick it up and drop it off. That could be a way where it doesn't really get vandalized because it's just sitting on the counter.
yeah.
I think we do know a lot of what people would say, so that's where I kind of said it goes to the number 3, as long as we're meeting and discussing the goals and we're listening to the community on those rants and raves page. Every time I see anything about the parks, I've been reading everybody's comments. So, I mean, people do complain a lot, but, I mean, there's a lot of things that people have valid problems with.
Sure,
So
of course.
just always be listening for what they're already saying is helpful. But a piece of paper would be good, just in City Hall, that simple, or a card.
Yeah, maybe we'll look at doing, with the marketing, maybe we'll come up with some sort of a survey in general that people can use for a myriad of things throughout the city.
Right.
We have a 3-1, I don't know if you've heard about our 311 program that we have put an RFP out for a 311 system, and we got 13 responses. So we're selecting someone right now. So this is something it's on your phone, and you're out and about and you see a pothole, or you see a sprinkler in the park that's just a geyser. You can report it from your phone, and it geolocates exactly where you are. So there's a menu, and you go to the right department, Parks Department, what's the problem? And you put that down, and then you say what it is, and you take a picture of it, and then that goes right to the appropriate person that can take care of that thing. So that's coming up. So we'll be marketing that thing pretty heavily when that comes out, and then hopefully that will allay some of the concerns that people have, because we can't be out everywhere in the town, so we don't see things, all the time. And when we do, then we take care of them. So it's helpful to have people. I mean, we work for the community, and so when the community tells us what is needed, it's helpful for us. So. And then this is just another tool, anonymously, or you can do it, or you can put your name down there, however you want to do it. But you'll be able to do code enforcement, things in the streets, things in the parks, trees, or whatever it is. So there's all kinds of things. We can push out messaging, but we're not going to push out messaging for, say, adverts for meetings, not even the council meetings, because it needs to be saved for the people. If someone sees a message come through, they think, oh, I need to check that out. Oh, I got to evacuate my house. I better go now. So it'll be like, we'd be pushing out messages for things that people really need to know. Or if we see something that's going on and we're getting a lot of calls, we'll push out a message saying, we know that this thing is happening. Thank you so much for, and so that people don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's coming up, and maybe that'll be helpful for some of this as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there an option, or if they can customize the option, is there an option for the public to give you compliments?
We don't get those. So, yeah.
But maybe you would if it was
That's what Park staff
but
does all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
if it were a drop down, maybe if they're like, oh, I can pay a compliment.
That's a good. Maybe we'll have to put a smiley face feature on there.
Is there something we're doing well? Tell us.
Yeah.
We
That's
might do
actually-
it more often.
That's a great idea. We should do that. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other comments? So I think we covered Parks Commission goals in that discussion as well. Do we have any administration reports?
I just gave one.
Okay.
Out of context, but I think.
Can I ask a question, though, about number 3? So there's actually a list called Parks Commission goals that I got when I first started. And so my thought was to kind of go over at some point where we are on a lot of these ideas that were come up with. So I think I may have suggested number 3, and that's kind of what I wanted to know, because I know all these things were brought up at some point to make this goal list. So where are we on a lot of these items, maybe from staff, just to inform us if some things are being talked about already or if we need to revisit them.
And I think maybe some of those are covered. I was just looking at, we were supposed to have an update on Bedrock Park, fencing in parks, and the Portland Loo.
Frederick Mayo's here to,
talk about those,
yep.
for sure.
Great, okay.
Sir, can you go to the
Are we
microphone?
ready for me to talk now?
Or, I don't know if any of those, I'm just trying to do a quick
I'd like to
scan.
make a suggestion to the guys, as far as your question 3 or your marks 3 with Park Commission goals. It's kind of a verbiage thing, but it kind of changes the narrative and maybe the thought process behind it. Instead of maybe Park Commission goals, maybe turn that into a KPI, a key performance indicator, and kind of start looking at it that way. What are your KPIs to make this commission work for the city? And it's changing the words a little bit, but it kind of gives it a little bit different of a feel to it. And it starts embedding goals through key performance indicators and what would those look like, how to implement your goals, if that makes sense.
So, do we want to go through each of these and see the status of things? Is that what you're?
Well, my thought was, I could always meet with staff separately, like we could have a separate meeting, but these meetings are online. I don't know how many people watch them. But it kind of would be good to run through and say, is this still something we're working on, or is this no longer important? So whether that should happen on a greater scale, or if this meeting's better.
And I'd be happy to meet you at any time.
Right.
We can sit down and
Right.
go try to wrap it
Sure.
up as many as I can.
I just received this. Maybe can you just glance at these and see if there's some that are currently being worked on, so people kind of know? I mean, I didn't make this was from staff.
Strobe lights.
I'd love to hear about Hewitt Park.
Can I have a copy of this and then I'll try to make
Sure,
sense.
I think,
I can send you a
yeah, I
copy.
think they had the copy. My main question, I was real curious about if the bathrooms are gonna hopefully maybe be open to the public during normal hours at some point.
Which bathrooms? Parks.
At the parks, yes, like at, I believe that Rotary Park hasn't been open in a while, nor is Hammond. Am I correct on
To the
that?
best of my knowledge, MELs or city staff has opened those.
They have
They've been
lately?
opening
Okay.
up early in the morning and
Okay.
close them towards the end of the day.
Okay, great, yeah,
I will look into that, and if that's not the case, I will find out what's happening.
Okay.
With it, I know with some of the transients have been moving around as of late, and there's been more gathering over at Rotary, so some of them might have been closed
Right.
there temporarily,
Okay.
but there should be, we have a weekend parks crew that's going through, cleaning
Okay.
restrooms.
Okay.
Doing trash on the weekends, they're actually offset, they
Right.
they start on Thursday and they work through Sunday.
Okay.
To specifically work on the parks on the weekends, so.
Okay, that's great to hear.
If you have some specific concerns, I will address those with my
Sure,
staff and
sure.
find out what's going on with that. But to the best of my knowledge, that all the restrooms are open.
Okay, good.
There's a few exceptions, Bedrock, we closed
Right.
that yesterday.
Right.
We put a fencing up, and I wanted to speak to that too, if you'd like to transition over to that now.
Sure, no, that's great. I had just heard a lot of people saying the restrooms had been closed, not super recently, so maybe
Okay.
you've done good work since you've been here in the last few months, or that hasn't been the case.
And I think the hours are probably rolled back in the fall and the wintertime too, to try to discourage homeless
Right.
for setting up, because it's been a significant problem with the unhoused setting up and trying to live in our restrooms. And to try to get them out is really difficult with the state law, but now the grants pass law has changed, and there's some other things going on that's gonna make it easier to get them out. But until recently, it's been an issue getting homeless people out, so.
Right, okay,
And
great,
that's probably part of that, but in the summertime, I believe they are open, so.
okay, great. The last experience I had was soccer practice at Rotary Park last fall. I know a lot of times we would have soccer practice it gets dark a little earlier, so it was still early evening, 5 o'clock-ish, and they were always locked for all the kiddos, and you get a lot of kiddos for
Yeah,
those
there's-
practices, so.
Absolutely. So, and we were short-staffed back in the fall too,
Right.
and that's another piece that's not always talked about. The Parks team and that side of the Public Works House, we've added, I don't want to over-embellish, but I believe we've added 4 new employees in the last 3 months. So that's a pretty
Big
substantial
difference.
lift for us.
Yeah.
So
That's
there's a
great.
lot of new staff coming on too, which is very helpful. Okay. So off to, any other questions before?
Not specific ones,
Okay.
no.
So Hewitt Park, there's quite a few, or not Hewitt, I'm sorry, Bedrock Park. I'm not that close to Hewitt Park, so I'm not that close to the Heartbeat. So I know we're getting a bunch of material stored at our new courtyard. We got new slides, we got a new play structure over there. We got some new things that are actually been ordered a while back, and we actually have them. So as far as Bedrock Park, last week, Public Safety and Code Enforcement, City Administrator went out and took a look at a Bedrock. You can see that it's not being irrigated well. The main supply line of water for irrigation is damaged, it's past its useful life, and it's a very expensive irrigation system to replace. So currently, I was out there yesterday with our new city engineer and some other folks looking at a plan to get that going. So we put the fence up around the park to close it for multiple reasons. There's some rock wall issue up on the levee that's been broken down for a while, but it's kind of become more of a public hazard. So my team's gonna be out there probably the next few weeks or a month or so. We're gonna rebuild that part of the rock wall to make it from a falling hazard, essentially. The staircase has a lot of issues too. I've been here about a year, and I've been focusing a lot on asphalt, getting the St. Park fence built, getting street lighting.
Beautiful, by the way.
It is nice, isn't it? And, thank you, I appreciate that, because there was a lot of back and forth with the ad hoc committee on what we were gonna do with that fence, and I don't know, it's hard to get 4 or 5 people to agree on anything, and when everybody's got a very strong sense of what they want, it was nice to get that consensus, to get that,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that. Going back to Bedrock, though, so predates me, there was a vehicle accident out there. They took out the electrical pedestal out there. The park hasn't had electricity in about a year. I'm very close to having PG&E reestablishing connection. They actually wrote checks. They'll be mailed to PG&E tomorrow. They've been in design for about 6 months for the new electrical service to come off the telephone pole, go underground to a pedestal, which is basically a tall, skinny box with an electrical meter on it, and that's where PG&E power comes in, and it becomes city power. It's been a fight to get that done. So we're probably about 2 months away from getting the lights back on. So that's part of the public safety issue. There's others out there that are loitering quite a bit. I've heard of other nefarious activities going on out there. So talking to city administrator, police department, code enforcement, we decided collectively irrigation's bad. There's some damaged trees out there, the rock wall. The list is pretty lengthy out there. The fire from the bathroom right before I got here. So there's a myriad of issues. We decided to close it for public safety issues. That fence is gonna be up for probably at least 6 months, maybe a little bit more. We're looking at alternatives, how to get the water supply back up and running to fix our irrigation system. Last time, there was an estimate to just run the piping, so you guys understand how much of an obligation this is. It was about $80,000 just to run a new pipe for the sprinklers to work. That doesn't include the controllers, the valves, all the irrigation, so it's probably a little bit more money. The other piece to that is with the fence up, where I have, trespass, park is closed, it gives law enforcement, code enforcement, more teeth and more backing to go out there. So if there's somebody in the park, daytime, nighttime, whatever, it gives them more authority to actually go in and make arrest. And that's a really important part, so we can start curtailing that activity. I love the location of Bedrock, but I don't like the way it looks. And I promise this commission, it'll look different this time next year. We're already working on plans for native plants, potentially maybe shrinking a little bit of the grass and new lighting out there, and to get the Portland Loo up and running. The Portland Loo, ironically enough, there's 2 of them in the city, as you know. Centennial Park That one's used regularly. But it's also assaulted regularly. In the last 4 or 5 months, our team has been out there, and we spent about $1,000 on repairs on just the door alone, on door handles, door locks. The Portland Loos are supposed to be very they're supposed to be resistance to damage, and the door handles in the locking system on the door, those door handles and lock were $1,000 just for the one door. It was opened, and it was open to the public for about 2 months. Reported out to City Council. Portland Loos got power. Everything's working. Yay! The hand dryer's good. We got it all going. Somebody put super glue inside in the locks and locked the door. So it destroyed the $1,000 lock. So we've been back multiple times. We've removed the nice polished aluminum handles and the nice locking system. Now it's just a good old-fashioned barn door handle. That's been destroyed multiple times. So we've gone back, we've used epoxy, used rivets, filed off the heads of the rivets, and it's still being damaged. And we have a deadbolt on it. So if somebody decides to lock themselves in, we can still open up the door. We're out there routinely 3 times a month to unplug clothing. There's been a tent. There's been all kinds of stuff trying to be flushed. So the thing is, we're out there constantly doing maintenance on it and trying to keep it clean. And so if you do go out there at the time and it's dirty, it's because we're out there 4 days a week cleaning it. And it happens to be, we clean it, we leave, and somebody flushes a jacket in the toilet. Our Vactor's been out there. We've been out there multiple times. So that's at Centennial Park. The Portland Loo over at Bedrock Park, that's an interesting story because we have a pretty consistent unhoused population there. There's other folks that are hanging out there on a regular basis. There's no electricity out there. There is water to it. But the folks that are out there on a regular basis, they're kind of gardening it. We've had very minimal graffiti in it, very little damage at all, and they've kind of taken ownership of it. And that one's actually been in really good shape, all things considered, which I find kind of interesting. But, you know, we had to close the park for the current state. We're hoping to have a plan together. We want to come to council with some ideas and tentative budgets, probably right around Thanksgiving, maybe a little before or a little after, but not much later than that. We have some ideas, but we're going to try to get some numbers and facts together for new lighting. The electrical pedestal will be installed by then, and then some quotes for the irrigation, which will really turn the park around.
Can I ask a question about the Portland Loo? Do they automatically lock, or are they locked at night, or are they open 24 hours a day?
We were doing locked at night. There's no Bluetooth, there's nothing like that.
I
That
didn't
would-
know if they were
yeah.
designed to
I
automatically.
wish, but I feel like that would just get destroyed, because we were looking at the Lot Home doing that too, and it added several tens of thousands of dollars to it, and potentially them getting damaged. We were locking them every night. We gave up on doing that with Centennial, so it's open all the time. It's reduced some of the vandalism to it. We've had the same door handle on there now for about 2 months, so.
Right, they don't need to break in if
They
it's.
don't need to break in if it's
Yeah.
locked. I don't understand the thought of, if I don't have nice things, nobody's going to, and I'm gonna destroy it. It just, it's, doesn't sit well with me. And they're nice bathrooms, they're great facilities, and it just kind of breaks my heart to see that we're out there taking so much material out of that one. And we haven't locked the one at Bedrock either, and we haven't had a problem with it out of Bedrock, other than one small warming fire in January and some graffiti.
So I have a question about the fencing.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess it was a couple years ago when we first started the conversation about the fence around Sank Park, and we prioritized that for obvious reasons.
Yes.
So now, are you talking about what initially was the idea, like you referred to, if the fences, if the parks are all fenced, it's better for law enforcement? Are you saying now we're moving forward with, are we going to be presented with design ideas for the other parks, or is it just going to be what's cost effective and?
For landscaping and those type of things, for Bedrock, yeah, I would imagine we'll come to the commission with some conceptual ideas, and we still have to get approval from city council. The direction is get it green, take care of the dead trees, get the lighting working, and
and let's get power to the port. Those are the directions. So we're not going to be doing some type of a radical transformation, but there is talk of maybe a potential tot lot out there, maybe some shaded structures out there down by the barbecue. It seems to be, in my view, a very large park with only one restroom with, I know there was the building there before. I think it was probably a 3-stall bathroom for both sides, and we're down to one, so that might be something we might want to look at too, but that drives the cost pretty substantially because you have to tie into the sewer system.
So do you see a timeline for when you would like to see eventually all of the parks with these fences? Or does that depend on
We haven't had
funding?
that broader conversation yet with fences at all parks.
Okay,
My primary focus was that we had this contract for St. Park. It went back. Design review, too expensive, design review, too expensive. And so when I came on a little over a year ago, this is where we're at, this is the budget that we have, this is what city council approved. Make it fit in this budget, and here's the basic designs. Let's make it happen. And that's how that fence came about.
Right.
Now, as far as the law enforcement question with the fencing, this is why we did it at Bedrock. So we're purposely closing it off to the public. So if PD goes by, or they get a complaint from somebody that there's somebody loitering in the park, now they're trespassing. So there's another reason for PD to actually make an arrest versus just hanging out and being a vagrant, because homelessness is, in the state of California, is not against the law. We have a reason for an enforceable action, because now they've jumped the fence, they're physically in an area that's closed, and it's posted no trespass. So we can get them on those type of violations. And that's the genesis of the fence around the park,
right.
besides the landscaping and the other pieces that we talked about. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a long-term project for
It
eventually all of
is,
the
it
parks.
is. And it's my goal to have something very functional by next summer.
Yeah,
I'll feel like I'm not doing my due diligence if we can't get a project out and completed over the winter time. That might be a little pie in the sky, but, we drive a pretty hard bargain. I don't like leaving that type of infrastructure out of service for too long.
sure.
Because it's a real asset to the city, and it's not fair to the taxpayers and to the citizens that we have this beautiful asset and it's unusable.
Okay.
Did you have any more specific things you're going to say, or can I ask a question?
Fire away.
Okay, so with Bedrock, we have that fence up. We're kind of changing the habits of the people who used to use it. They're now not allowed in. They're going to move somewhere else, and they're not going to be there for an extended period. So I think the most important thing is when we reopen it to the public, we have things in place where the public now essentially takes it back. Otherwise, the undesirables will just come back if the public, if nobody's using it. So I think it'd be really great to have some sort of big reopening. I know right now, I don't believe you can rent anything there. So, like for bouncy houses, you could start rebranding it as, instead of renting Rotary and Hammond, you can rent there. So any sort of pavilion and just infrastructure to have a party there, that gets more people coming there and getting used to using it. So just anything, that would be my suggestion, is if you put it just on the rental facilities for the city and have something in place just to plug in a bouncy house, that alone will get more people using it.
100% agree. And to make that happen, we have to get electricity back from the.
Right, and that's what I mean,
And
at
we're
the
working
end
on
of that, make sure that that is kind of like listed as a rental
Yes.
place.
And I agree, and I think there's a missed opportunity for that exact reason. And shade, there's no shade down in the large grassy area. And that's why we're looking at potential shade structures and those
that'd
type
be
of things over the tables down there, the picnic tables, maybe add a couple more, maybe some of the in-ground removable barbecues, because
Right.
those become problems too if they go unchecked. And when I alluded to earlier, a potential tot lot, we're thinking up on top, kind of up by where the upper parking lot is, and there's that island where the trees are. I think it's a wonderful idea because the skate park is right across the street. But more importantly, if you have a colorful, bright pinks and purples and blues and reds and all these bright, vibrant colors with covers and the structure, it's really visible from the highway. And right now, you're going northbound on 70.
Right.
You don't see it.
What is that? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's an empty lot. Well, wait, now there's something, there's like with flags on it, and there's color, and there's people there. I think that actually brings the interest in too. And at some point, we're gonna be looking at the kayak kiosk. I know that's kind of came and went. I don't know where we're at with that one, but I was talking to our new city engineer, our assistant director. She has some ideas, and there's some vendors out there that we might potentially use, but I'm not really wanting to talk about that yet because I don't want to get out too far out in front before talking to city council about that. But we do have some great ideas there. And we're talking potentially maybe native plants type garden or a dry creek bed path up there. We want to shrink a little bit of the sod footprint because it's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah.
It's like $1,000 a month to water Hewlett Park. Just for the grass. That's substantial. We're not even talking lighting or anything else. So and once that water park comes online with the electricity with pumps and the chlorinators and pickleball and the new lighting out there and all these extra things, it's a substantial impact. There's a lot of money there.
Do you guys do swimming out there? At Bedrock?
At Bedrock down in the canal or
Well, when I was a child, which
Yes.
was many, many years ago,
the lagoon?
it was the spot to
Yes.
go. It was like you're either going to go to the 4-Bay or you're going to go to Bedrock, and it was always very exciting when we got to go to Bedrock and go swimming. And there was probably 50 kids there all the time.
Sure. From what I understand, this kind of predates me a little bit. I'm not going to try to use the new guy routine too much longer
Yeah.
because I can't, because I'm getting too old to be that. But it sounds like during the spillway incident, a lot of that debris came down and it changed the dynamics and the flow of the lagoon. I believe that's what we're calling that, the swimming hole lagoon. And there's been talks with DWR. I don't know exactly where those are or if they stalled out, but there's supposed to be some mediation to improve that again. And it seems like that's fell off. And that we were looking at that yesterday too. Is there a better way to get a landing down there? Not for a boat ramp, or for better access for folks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting thing because we own all the way down to the water there, and Feather River has a weird boundary there too. So there might be a little bit of a cooperative piece there.
Be
too.
great.
So, yeah,
Be great.
it's things I'm thinking about and I would love to make happen too. There's a lot of potential there.
Yep.
So you brought up the rental station. Was that part of this grant that we were looking at? And do you know the status of the grant?
I do not.
Because I have the paperwork, but I came in just at the beginning, so that's
And
kind of
that's-
all I've talked about. is
That's
just
for
looking at
the
paperwork.
kayak.
Well, it was for the whole River Trail grant, and I believe on this paperwork, it notes that, but I don't know if that would be something that the city would do, or if even you would build the facility and then you would have somebody manage the rentals. And I also am not sure if maybe the rental could be down closer to the fish hatchery. I know that's where people put in, and then maybe you end closer this way.
So there's a couple different conversations there. I would like to speak with a definitive answer, and I don't.
Right.
And there hasn't been at least in my mind, Pat, maybe
Well,
I don't want to
the-
go too far off into the weeds on
We,
that. but-
we didn't get the grant that we were trying for. That was, I think that announcement was in April or May, something like that, that officially we did not get the grant. And then the kayak kiosk is still something that's on the radar, but we don't really know exactly how that works. I think that we have to get some things straightened out with the park first, and there's how we staff it and you know, that kind of thing. I think we've considered looking at a vendor. I guess what I should say is that there's nothing in the near future that's coming, but as Fred mentioned, it's still a conversation that's happening here, and we have it on our radar, and we're hoping that another grant might come up that we could tap into for that.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, the more things you have kind of on the radar to tell the public about, hey, come use this park, we're cleaning it up, we have this plan, we're gonna start using it more, and we're gonna have these things coming. I just worry about doing all this work, and then you open it, and then people that you don't want just come right back. So I think all that's great. We just.
That's a
have to line
statewide
it all
issue
up.
too, so
Yeah,
hoping.
Nationwide, I'm sure.
Well, hope is not a strategy. I'm going to throw that out there first of all, but I'm hoping with some of the recent changes with the grants pass law being overturned and the executive order from the governor, there's some fundamental changes happening. So we'll see how the next 12 months actually plays out, but I'm hoping we get more support on being able to
Right.
to keep our parks clean, so.
As far as the kiosk is concerned, there was actually a downtown business that did similar rentals. It was on Huntoon. It probably closed before any of y'all were here, so 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, even if you just talk to the DBA about possibly, hey, we're thinking about a facility, is there somebody in the community who's interested in kind of partnering with them? Because I know they rented kayaks and canoes and they'd take you, it didn't get off the ground because then COVID happened, but they did it for 6 months or so maybe before.
Yeah, there's probably a good 6-month kayak season here, I
Yeah.
would imagine. And-
Right.
And maybe a kiosk maybe over by the fishery might work. That state property, I don't know what that looks
Right.
like. And
But if you could
I-
have
I don't want the
two and
city to
partner
lose
with
out
them.
on anything either,
Right.
so. But I know the DWR, they're doing these floating classrooms. They do them in the summertime, and we're gonna have to, because they come out at the lagoon there at Bedrock,
Mm-hmm. Right.
so we're gonna have to accommodate them. However that looks to get all the floating classroom folks out. There was, I think, about 20 participants last year, give or take 3 or 4, so. Okay. There's something else I wanted to talk on. It's Sank Park, but it's more kind of related to the lot house itself. So I asked in our budget this year for a pretty significant amount of money to do some serious improvements over at the lot house. There's a lot of dry rot issues going on. It hasn't been painted in a long while. Those old heaters out on the patio, obviously all the gas lamps are out there are damaged or completely broke. Interestingly enough, all the luminaires, the glass, the milk glass on top, a lot of them are gone. But the brass valving and the tubing and the copper tubing, a lot of it's still intact, which I find kind of interesting. You broke the glass, but you didn't steal the stuff. Anyways, I'm working with a couple different contractors. I found the actual contractor that can get us the glass and the milk glass. The milk glass is the white kind of glass up on top. If you actually take a close look at those lamps over there, don't look too close because it's disappointed me. I'll put it that way. When I was looking at a distance, it looks like there's milk glass on a lot of them, but it's actually aluminum caps. I don't know where they came from, but they work, but they're not authentic and they're not accurate. Working with it's the only folks that do it, and they're in Connecticut, I believe, is where I found these folks. They know our light standards. They could actually help us rebuild them into the gas, which I'm resistant to because gas is expensive. And they'd have to burn 24 hours a day because the remote control starters aren't very good, or we pay staff to go out there and light them and turn them off every day, which that's not a great use of city dollars either. So I'm looking at potentially converting them into LED with a flame, kind of a flickering flame from a distance. It looks like it's gas lit. It throws off a little bit of ambient, and it's electrical. So we're looking at part of the more holistic, kind of calling it a mini CIP over there with painting it, getting the dormers up on the attics, sealed up because they're open. I worry that there are squirrels, rats, bats, raccoons, you name it, there's potential all kinds of critters that could potentially live up in the attic. We need to seal those up. So that work should be going out to bid hopefully later this fall, and look for the springtime for that being cleaned up and painted. And hopefully there's gonna be enough money left over to get all the lamps, because there's 9 gas lamps out there, maybe 11. I think it's 9 that need to be redone. And we're looking at doing something with the gazebo too.
Good.
Because there's a lost opportunity in that park, where from what I understand, there was a lot of weddings, there's baby showers, there's all these milestones, graduations, and the way it looks, we're losing that type of business. So we need to turn that ship around and right it, so.
I think also aesthetically, priority should always be given to the lot home. That is something, that's how we felt about the fence project. That's something that people who live here and tourists see when they come into our historic downtown.
Yes.
And, that, I think that should always be looked
Well,
at.
it's a centerpiece, isn't it? It's your,
Absolutely.
when I first came up here and I came down Montgomery, I'm going by these, it's like, okay, whatever. And then you get towards Lot House and down in that area, and all these houses are all, wow, this is really something. This is a really nice, intact, Victorian, old neighborhood. And you see the condition of it. I don't feel like I'm doing my job if I leave it like that much longer.
Right.
That's why we asked for those additional funds this year, just to paint it and to do the dry rot. And original quotes I got were about 5 months ago. A lot of that wood, I'm sorry if I'm going too far off into the ditch here, but I'm trying to give you real context of what's happening over there. The tongue and groove wooding, the siding on the side of the house, it's a certain type. There's only a couple mills left in the country that actually do it.
And redwood and, yeah.
Well, I think we can kind of fudge
Yeah.
that a little bit. We can use cedar, because redwood's a great wood, but
Yeah.
cedar's very good too.
Yes.
And there's other materials that we could use, but it's the actual cut and the way they tie into each other is where the expensive part comes. It's almost 100,000 or a little over 100,000 just to do the dry rot and the painting of the house. So it doesn't leave a whole lot left in the budget, because I want to get air conditioning in there too, because we have older docents. Just being a casual observer going in there with my family last summer, and I'm trying to check this place out when I first started here, and it's like 90 degrees in the house. It's like, this is not a pleasant experience. So we're working on those type of things as well. But the lighting and the painting is the biggest. And we have a new cultural facilities curator, Heather, or not Heather, I'm sorry, Hannah. Yes, that was a Freudian slip there. She's great. She has a lot of energy, and we're working. Heather started this, trying to organize with the Master Gardeners, and we're supposed to meet out there, I believe, next week to talk about what they could actually do out there at some of the gardening at the Lot House and some other locations, which is a really neat opportunity. And I heard there might have been a little bit of talk of maybe some type of a community garden, maybe on the side of the Bolt Museum, so, which would be really cool. And it's interesting, I haven't seen a community garden in every city I've ever worked. They're always very popular, and they're a great thing to tie the community together with community gardens. They're a lot of fun, so.
When you're replacing the dormers out there, is there any opportunities to maybe work with Fire Safety Council to make it ember-proof? And, I don't know if we're actually in a WUI in that area, but
That would
It's
be a
just
good
something we
question. We could definitely look
Yeah.
at that.
Okay.
And I'm not opposed to that, as long as we can keep it historically looking. It's,
Yeah.
I want it modern, and I want it to look like
Right.
an old place on the outside, and when you're in the rooms looking at it, it looks like it's all original, but inside the walls and the ceiling and the floors, I want it absolutely modern.
Great.
So, that was something else we've done since I've been here, is there was no fire monitoring at any of our museums, and so we got reportable smoke detectors now that detect heat and smoke that actually call the fire department. We never had that before, so.
Nice.
That was kind of a big improvement. And when
Yeah.
I went in there, it's like, are you kidding me? We got all these assets, and a fire starts, it's just a smoke detector that nobody's gonna hear in the middle of the night. By the time the fire starts, we would lose the temple, or we could lose the Lot House. These catch the smoke and the heat and the light in the incipient stage when a fire's small, very controllable. They work so well. One of the sensors, somebody was breaking into one of the restrooms outside. They were smoking in the men's room out there, and it tripped the smoke alarm.
Wow.
Orville Fire, they got tired. They went out there 4 or 5 times. They're all, Fred, you got to fix this, man. So we changed the technology a little bit, and no more false alarms, but it works really good.
Great.
Great.
I was just going to say thank you for maintenance and improving that house. It is really important. While you're looking at the lighting, at the Chinese temple, they
Yes.
also have some really neat fixtures.
Yes.
I think there's only one that still has the original covering or glass. And so that one could be a model to look at the lighting there too. I
Okay.
can't remember exactly this conversation I had with some friends a few years ago, because we're all in historic preservation and interested. So I know that there was only one left. The rest had been stolen or vandalized. Hopefully there's still one left.
And let's see if I'm thinking of the same one. Is it down by the
Closer to the building that's closer to the
big,
street.
is it the Bigler building?
I don't know which one that
It's
is.
the one that where the Hmong temple was going to be. I
The
believe
one
there's
that's right at the street?
Yeah,
Yes, there's
still
one
intact.
right there that
Yes.
still is original until somebody's gonna end up
It's
vandalizing it, I'm
smashing.
sure. But if you could look at all of them, maybe the same company.
Holistic, and they are the folks that provide the glass. So
Okay.
that's something I wanted to mention too. So those glass luminaries that would fit that light and the ones over at St. Park, they're about $250 a pop. Now, they've had some technology. I've gone back and forth. This is my own internal struggle, and I need to get my will out of the way, because you can use high-density plastic now, where you can throw a rock at it all day long. It's not going to break. So it's vandalism-proof. The downside to it is that they yellow, and they can crack in 3 or 4 years, and the plastic always, kind of like the headlights on a car. They're super clear for the 3 or 4 years, and they start yellowing. I'm resistant to that, but they're typically, $250 for one glass, or we can get one for about $70. It's almost worth, seems like it's better money spent if we buy them for $70 and they start yellowing or crack, we just pull them out, throw them away, and put a new one in. So I'm kind of looking at that too. Physically, you won't be able to tell the difference unless you tap on it or throw a rock at it. So it's important to have that historical character to it as well. And supposedly you can use gas or lighting in it, so.
Any other comments or questions on this topic? Okay.
I think for a Hewitt Park update.
Oh, yes.
So that is, we've had the design, well, they started to, they're preparing the bid package to go out, and then I realized that they didn't have the stamped approval from the building department, and I didn't want it to go out without having it ready for a contractor to just come in and pull permits, because if there's anything that has to be get mitigated, then now we have big change orders most likely. So it was good that we did, because through that process we found that there's an ADA issue with the big giant slide and getting people up there, and then there's the upper park where there's that train. Does that have a separate name?
Yeah, there's, the Shea locomotive is up on top, and then there's the 06.
It's all part of Hewitt Park, or is that a
Yeah.
separate park?
They're all the same part.
So, so we're working that out. It's a 17-foot high drop from base to top, and so the ramp we have to put in is something like, I forget, it's like 180 or 210 feet or so. It's a really long ramp, and so it's very expensive, and then it's difficult to lay out because it has to wrap back and forth, and we're trying to figure out, can we use the line of the side? Do we have to pull out trees to make it happen? So all of that stuff is getting sort of worked out right now. The plans are in development review, in building department review for everything else, and probably it's going to pass all of that because it's already gone back and forth a couple times with some comments, and they've been talking with our plans examiner. So I think that we're most likely we'll get through that, but then we still have to get this ramp thing worked out. And then our new city engineer is taking a look at them also, just to make sure she's wanting to make sure that the bid packet is nice and tight, and so that we get good bids when they come back. So hopefully that'll go out to bid. I'm guessing now probably in September, maybe mid-September, that we'll actually get it out to bid. And then we'll give probably at least 6 weeks for a response, maybe 2 months for responses. So realistically, it's we're heading into the winter season, so some prep will be able to happen here and there, but the park won't really be fully underway and in construction until more like the spring, something like that. So the ADA ramp became a big problem. Yeah.
Was it originally done incorrectly by the firm who did the plans, or did they just not account for it at all, or?
They had a stairway that was leading up, and then they had some other, they had ADA access to some other features. But our building plans examiner he's a CASP specialist. It's an ADA, he has a certificate in ADA compliance. And so when you have 2 levels of a park, and we have a big feature up there, a train, and then we have this long slide that goes all the way to the top. So if without really working that out, there could be some liability issues. So we considered doing something like putting up a fence and calling it 2 different parks, and then having ADA access down below. But at the end of the day, all of it was getting sort of confusing. So it just seemed like the better deal is to do the ramp. The ramp is proving difficult, so it's barely possible that we'll end up pivoting and going, but finding another way to do all of this. But the ramp is challenging because it's really long, and the slope is just kind of, you can't really use that natural slope so well. So.
Were there any other major features of the park or the playground that were going to be touted as ADA, or is it just
There's a feature down in the, there's the other slides, so there's two slides. There's a big, long slide, which was not actually going to be ADA, but now it is. And then there's the shorter slide that was ADA compliant. And then there's another feature, like kind of a spinning feature that's down below that's where a wheelchair can go right on it. And then some of the water features will be, somewhat ADA, yeah. It's going to be a great park.
It's going to be a great park.
It really is, yeah. It's going to be really nice.
I'd heard on a city council meeting that something was discussed about changing the scope of the work to reduce certain features. So did that have to do with the ramp, or is that just a feature out that they had? There was something, I just saw a line item.
What was that again?
There was something about the Hewitt Park bid that the city council was looking at being able to reduce some of the features.
Oh,
Do you
okay,
remember
so, well,
And I was kind of concerned.
so what
with that.
happened was, I brought Melton, the design firm, they came up with, we're trying to save some money. So they said, if you guys purchase all of the amenities yourselves, you'll save the contractors, P&O.
Right.
And all that. So they were estimating it'd be about $150,000. So I took to council that request, and council overwhelmingly said, yes, we want to do that. And then I thought, what if we go over and they want to cut out something once we've purchased it? You can't do that anymore. So then I came back to council for a second meeting and asked that question.
Okay.
Are you committed to everything here? Because if we purchase it, then
Right.
we have to we can't, you can't just return it.
Okay.
It's a giant slide, or, there's features that are specifically built for this project. So, no, it was a 7-0 vote to keep everything in.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's hard to read the agendas and figure out what actually happens in the
Right.
several-hour meetings, so.
Yeah.
I just noticed it and wanted to ask.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak a little bit on Hewitt too, is that some of the internal discussion I had on the public works and Woodland Parks, there's all these wonderful improvements going on, but some of the lighting wasn't exactly addressed in the original. And we have some wonderful spun aluminum light poles that were purchased for a Caltrans job a number of years, probably the last 2 or 3 years. Didn't meet Caltrans standard highway stuff, but they're perfectly fine for the park, and we're looking at opportunities of saving the city money and the budget by providing some additional lighting that either city staff can install or maybe have a contractor help install those to give additional light. So, because there's a lot of new improvements and a lot of the ornate or the decorative lighting that's out there, those green light standards that are out there with the nice ornate bulbs on it. Looking at it through my eyes, walking through there, it looks like they're more focused on just lighting the parking lot for the most part, and maybe some of the back trails. There's a couple of those light standards have been, I don't know how that happened, but they've been knocked over and otherwise broke, so they're missing. And that would be over by the new basketball court where the bocce ball was, where potentially some of those spun aluminum light standards could be used. I have a little concern with that because there's not continuity. I'm kind of a nut if everything's kind of that patina green copper look.
Yeah.
But we don't have endless funds either.
Right.
This is a good way to maybe get some quality lighting. We might have to do that, so, just as a sidebar.
Quite right.
Okay, thank you both for the updates and the reports. Any commission reports before I do art commission update? Okay, so a few exciting things we talked about during our art commission. One was some 3D photo op ideas for downtown, like a living mural, not quite what we're used to seeing downtown, but we're talking about some ideas that could incorporate something specific to this area, honoring something about our history, about our culture, about our community. And so we have a subcommittee, and we will be doing some research and returning with some ideas. Also, we discussed sponsorship of the Great Feather River Mosaic Mural. We talked about possibly displaying some art or possibly advertising on the new receptacles downtown. Maybe having a rotating idea for businesses to submit their advertising. We're talking about how we could do that, where it could be interchangeable, but also free or discouraging of vandalism. The Birdcage Theater is having a fundraiser on September 6th. I believe that's a Friday at 6 o'clock at the Monday Club. It's a murder mystery dinner that will include a barbecue, cocktails, and a show. It's $50 per person or $80 per couple. And I believe their Facebook page has more details. And I am going to be starting a project with a connection down at the Butte County Historical Society to get together some photos where we can eventually, hopefully, have the Art Commission sponsor something to honor Orville's previous mayors in time for our 120th anniversary. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further business, I think we can adjourn this meeting. And our next regular meeting will be held on October 8th at 5:15.